So, the Great War of the Mahabharata. It's over. The trumpets are silent, the weapons are broken. But the silence that follows isn't one of peace. It's the heavy, suffocating silence of loss.
Have you ever wondered what happens when winning feels exactly like losing? Well, that's what we're diving into today. We're exploring the immediate aftermath of the war, a place where victory didn't bring parades or joy, just a deep, shared emptiness for absolutely everyone. As the sun came up, it revealed a whole new Kurukshetra. It really wasn't a battlefield anymore. It had become a vast, grim landscape of mourning. There is absolutely no triumph here. I mean, none. Imagine thousands of funeral pyres burning, the air thick with smoke, and the constant sound of wailing. The Pandavas, the ones who won, are just standing there in silence, their eyes completely empty. And then the defeated arrive, the blind king Dhritarashtra and his queen Gandhari, literally stumbling through the ashes of their 100 sons. In this moment, grief is the only thing that unites them. But you know, that shared grief, it was hiding something much more dangerous, because deep in the blind king's heart, a quiet, murderous rage was building, and it was about to explode. So Dhritarashtra approaches the Pandavas, and he heads right for Bhima, the one who killed his favorite son Duryodhana. Now, on the surface, this looks like an act of reconciliation, a grieving old man wanting to make peace. But Krishna is watching, and he senses the deadly truth behind the act. He knows this is no embrace of forgiveness.
Krishna turns to Bhima and says, "Go, greet your uncle." It sounds like a simple, respectful thing to do. But in those few words is a lightning-fast, life-saving plan that no one else sees coming.
In that split second before the hug, Krishna shoves an iron statue of Bhima, one he used for training, right into his place. It's an instant swap. And Dhritarashtra, blinded by his lack of sight and his all-consuming rage, has no idea he's about to hug a block of solid metal. And this is where we see the king's terrifying power. He pulls that statue into his arms and just squeezes with every ounce of strength he has. You can just imagine the sound of screeching, groaning metal as he crushes the iron figure, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. He poured all his hatred into that one moment, truly believing he was killing Bhima. As Dhritarashtra stands there, panting, his hands bleeding from the shards of metal, Krishna's voice cuts through the stunned silence. He asks the king if he has any idea how close he just came to committing another terrible sin, murdering his own nephew after the war was already over. The king's face just goes white. The rage vanishes, and all that's left is horror. But the king's physical violence wasn't the only storm on that field of sorrow. Another confrontation was about to erupt, and this one wasn't fueled by hidden rage, but by the raw, open grief of a mother. Gandhari, who had just lost all 100 of her sons, turns right to Krishna. And her words, they aren't a question. They're an accusation, just filled with raw pain. She points the finger directly at him, the divine protector, and holds him responsible for her unimaginable loss. In her eyes, he could have stopped it all. Krishna's response is so calm but firm. He doesn't deny his power. He just reminds her of all the chances he gave her son Duryodhana for peace. Every single one was rejected. And then he says something profound. The destruction of unrighteousness, of adharma, isn't a choice. It's basically a law of the universe. It was inevitable. But logic means nothing to a mother in that much pain. Unconvinced, Gandhari taps into the spiritual power she's built over a lifetime of devotion. She raises her hand, and in that moment, all her sorrow and anger are focused into one single, terrible purpose. She unleashes her curse, that Krishna's own people, the Yadavas, will suffer the exact same fate as her sons. They will destroy each other from within. And Krishna, he just bows his head and accepts it. Maybe it was always part of the plan, or maybe it shows that even a god on earth can't escape destiny. Another dark chapter is written, not in blood, but in words. So we've seen the rage and the curses from the losing side. But what about the victor, King Yudhishthira? Well, this is where we get to the philosophical heart of the whole story, where the true price of this war is finally added up. Look at this like a balance sheet. In the win column, a kingdom. But in the loss column, everything else. Sons, brothers, teachers, friends, and the one thing you can never get back, peace of mind. The wise sage Vidura lays this brutal reality out for Yudhishthira, and the scales aren't just tipped, they're broken.
This is the one question that hangs over everything. Vidura asks the new emperor, "You've won the war, but where is the taste of victory?" There is none. The crown just feels heavy, the throne feels cold, and the entire kingdom is built on a foundation of bones. The victory is completely and utterly hollow. For the elders, for Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, and Vidura, this hollow world just doesn't hold anything for them anymore. And so their story moves into its final, quiet, and tragic act. After a few years in the palace, they decide they're just done. They follow a very deliberate path. First, they renounce all their worldly ties. Second, they go into exile in the forest to live as ascetics. And finally, when a forest fire approaches, they make a conscious choice for their last step. And their final actions say everything. They don't run from the fire. They walk towards it. They embrace it as a final purification, a final release. For Dhritarashtra, it's a release from his ambition. For Gandhari, from her endless grief. And for Vidura, from the burden of his wisdom. This wasn't a tragic accident. It was a chosen end. So, as their stories end, we're left with these heavy questions. Was Gandhari's curse a just punishment for a god who allowed so much suffering? Or was it a terrible injustice? Was the king's rage just a father's grief? Or was it a final, unforgivable act of evil? The thing is, the aftermath of war is never simple. And just when Yudhishthira is starting to process all of this loss, just as he's reluctantly accepting the crown, he's about to be hit with a truth so devastating it will shatter what little peace he has left. His own mother, Kunti, reveals the epic's greatest secret. The man he considered his fiercest enemy, the man his brother Arjuna killed, was actually his older brother. So how does a man rule a kingdom after learning he's responsible for his own brother's death? We'll explore that shattering revelation in our next explainer.